I would argue that one of the things that has really helped me learn Spanish so fast, because I would say a year and a half of learning Spanish is pretty fast. I say one of the things that's helped me a lot is having access to a lot of native speakers that have helped me learn the language. I've been able to practice more than 2 to 3 times speaking Spanish per week. And so native Spanish speakers have really helped me out a lot. And I've really pretty much done all of this online. With that said though, I have noticed in my limited year and a half experience with the language, with the Spanish language, that there are some common things that native Spanish speakers have told me that in retrospect now I realize that they're bad pieces of advice. And when they tell us these things, when I say they, I'm talking native Spanish speakers, when they tell us Spanish learners that, I don't think their intention is to intentionally lead us astray. They're telling us things that are in our best interest, but with time I've realized that a lot of these things aren't in our best interest. So in this video I'd like to share 5 things that, and I don't know exactly how I'll title this video, but 5 things that native Spanish speakers tell to people that are learning Spanish. 5 pieces of advice or pieces of information that they tell us that unfortunately are not very true and are not very helpful. Even though they come from a good place, they're not very helpful. And please forgive me if I start sweating a lot. It's July in the state of Georgia. It's super humid. It's 11 o'clock in the morning right now, and it's super humid. So if I'm sweating a lot, that's why. But let's get into these 5 things. So the first bad piece of advice that a native Spanish speaker will tell you, I've heard this a lot, is they'll tell you a couple of things. They'll say, yeah, don't listen to bad Spanish, poorly spoken Spanish. They'll tell you don't listen to reggaeton. They'll tell you don't listen to music or content or anything that comes from people that don't speak Spanish well. Now, I get their intent with this, right? If I'm teaching someone to learn English, I would like for them to learn proper standard English. With that said though, I'm not always going to interact with people that speak the King's English, as we say, the King's Spanish, like the equivalent of the King's English, as we say in English. I'm not always going to be interacting with people that speak perfect Spanish. If you watched my video about Colombia, that's one of the things that really impacted me and shocked me, because I thought I was prepared to be in a native Spanish speaking country, and I really wasn't, because I listened to the poor advice of, hey, don't listen to reggaeton, don't listen to people that don't pronounce the S correctly, don't listen to Spanish from countries that, and again, I don't want to name any countries, but people will tell you, hey, you don't want to learn Spanish from this country because it's mal hablado, it's like bad, it's poorly spoken Spanish. That's not something that I agree with. I think that really will limit the amount of people that you can speak to and understand. And so again, I get the intent with people telling you this. Reggaeton, they speak slang Spanish. It's like Spanish of the streets, the Spanish that's not formal, it's not formal Spanish. But I'm not always going to be speaking to college professors or engineers or architects in these countries. I'm going to be speaking with the common man, common woman. Not saying that the common man and common woman speaks Spanish that way. I'm just saying there's diversity in the language. And so if you only listen to that advice of like, hey, only listen to and consume content with properly spoken Spanish, whatever that means, because I don't even personally agree with that concept of a language being spoken properly. But that's one thing that they'll tell you. They'll say like, don't listen to that kind of music because they don't speak well, they don't pronounce the words well. You need to hear that kind of stuff so you know when you're hearing someone that speaks like that what they're saying. That's really me exposing myself to language from all Spanish speaking countries, reggaeton, all genres. That's really helped me a lot. It's the equivalent of me telling someone that's learning English, hey, only listen to Frank Sinatra, because to me Frank Sinatra or somebody like Nat King Cole, these to me are like pure American accents. Like when I hear Nat King Cole or Frank Sinatra, I would characterize that as an American English accent. If I tell someone to only listen to that and they come to Atlanta, Georgia in the South, or if they go to a city in Georgia, a little small country town in Georgia, they're not going to understand what people are saying. And if your intent is to travel and meet new people, you want to be exposed to the different ways that people speak. So that's the first bad piece of advice that I'd recommend you not listen to. If you like reggaeton, listen to it. If you like content from a certain country where they say they don't speak standard Spanish, consume it. It's just going to help you get exposed to different languages. And again, I'm in Georgia, I'm outside. If you hear those cicadas, I apologize. Hopefully you all can still hear me. I also have to add, if any of my language partners or my Spanish tutors are listening to this, I appreciate you all giving me this information. So I'm not trying to step on your toes with this. It's just in my experience, some of these things would have inhibited me if I listened to them, or they did inhibit me in my process. So the second thing that I'd recommend you not listen to is people will tell you, hey, you need to choose an accent. Like, you need to choose to either focus on Mexican Spanish or Colombian Spanish or Dominican Spanish or Peruvian Spanish. You need to focus on one dialect so that you can really improve in the language. Again, some people know in the back of their mind, I want to move to Peru and live there for the rest of my life. I want to move to Puerto Rico and live there for the rest of my life and take advantage of the tax benefits or whatever. I want to move to the Dominican Republic or Colombia because I like that way of life. They know when they start the Spanish learning journey that they want to live in a specific place. I personally want to explore different places. So it would make no sense for me to take the advice of a lot of native speakers that tell me, hey, focus on this dialect, focus on the vocabulary from this country, focus on the vocabulary from this country, because it will help you improve your language improving the Spanish language much more. I disagree with that. I think for me, it's helped me that I've spoken with people from almost every country. I still haven't spoken to anyone from Uruguay or Paraguay, but I've spoken to people from every other Spanish-speaking country with the exception of Guinea Equatorial. I haven't had a full conversation. You guys don't care about that. My point is, I think it's beneficial to learn the slang, the words, the vocabulary from as many countries as you can, so that you get a wide net. Again, I'm making equivalents in English. It wouldn't make sense for me to tell someone, unless someone knows I want to live only in the United States, or I only want to live in the UK, or I only want to live in Australia, and they're learning English, sure, only focus on that. But I think it would be important if someone knows that they want to visit or possibly explore all of the English-speaking countries to learn some of the, if you want to focus on maybe the American English accent, great, but you should understand and learn how to understand and pick up on some of the vocabulary from England or some of the vocabulary from Australia. I think those things are beneficial, and so I would not take that second piece of advice that a lot of native Spanish speakers are going to tell you, which is focus on a specific accent, focus on a specific country. And a lot of times the recommendation that I've seen is Mexico or Colombia. I think it's better to cast a wide net and be able to speak to a diverse range of people versus only focusing on one or two countries for your own Spanish dialect. So the third bad piece of advice that I would say that a lot of Spanish speakers are going to tell you, native Spanish speakers will tell you, is that there are strict and hard rules in Spanish. For example, one of the hardest things for me, a while ago, and it still is a hard thing for me to grasp, is the difference between, and I forget the names of these grammatical structures, but like past tense for something. Basically, in English, how we say, I used to dance or I danced, right? Which I think is like imperative form. I don't know the names of these grammatical structures. My point is, a lot of Spanish speakers will tell you, yeah, well, always when you say this, you use this, okay? That will confuse you. At least if you have a personality like mine where if somebody tells me something, I'm gonna really soak it in and listen and kind of code that rule in my mind. And so, like, for example, people used to always tell me, look, for example, I'll give you a perfect example. People would tell me, if you're saying something that was continuous, like they tell you this in Spanish, Spanish speakers will tell you this. If you're talking about something that's continuous, you use the imperfecto, which is like if I say I used to give lessons, daba lecciones, instead of di lecciones. And if you know Spanish, you know what I'm talking about, okay? That's not true. That little rule that they say always is true is not true, because if you listen to native speakers, and I apologize again, I'm sweating a lot, it's hot. If you listen to native speakers, they'll say siempre bailé, which means I always danced. So it's like, it's confusing if they told you whenever you say something in the past that's continuous, you say bailaba, or like you use the aba ending, the imperfect ending. And they say siempre bailé. So it's like, what? Or they'll tell you, if you're talking about how something is, like its permanent being, you say ser. But there are cases where you'll say estar for something that's permanent. So again, when I say, man, I'm sweating a lot. This rule number 3, sorry, I don't know if I've clarified the second thing that you shouldn't listen to. You should not listen to native Spanish speakers when they tell you something is always like this. I get why they say that, because it does help us in terms of understanding that, all right, if I need to use this ending, I should use it in this case, in this case. But there are no black and white rules, I think, in any language. And Spanish is a perfect example of that. There's so many things that you're like, well, I learned a rule that said this, but in this case, it's not like that. What? So I would just kind of, and I get, if you need me to explain how you can avoid that or not fall into this rule, I can explain that in another video. But that's the third rule. Don't listen when they say this is always like this or this is always like that. In my experience, there's nothing that's always this way in Spanish. Man, it's hot. It's hot. Okay. The fourth bad piece of information, the bad piece of advice that native Spanish speakers will tell you is if you're learning something and it's like a grammatical structure or some kind of conjugation or something that you don't understand, they'll just say, sometimes, again, please, those of you that are watching this that have helped me learn Spanish, I'm not saying negative things, I'm just honestly speaking. And I'll give an analogy in English in a second, but they'll tell you, if you ask them like, why is that like that? Like, why is this structure like that? They'll just say, I don't know, it's just like that. I don't think there's a rule for it. There's not a rule for it, okay? They're typically, although I said in the last point that languages don't make sense, typically there is logic behind languages, behind different languages. And so, there's always animals around here. So, if you find something that's not making sense logically, the logic behind this grammatical structure isn't making sense, you can find a reason for it, a logical reason for it. I'll give you an example in English. If you're speaking to somebody and you're teaching them English, if I were to ask you, watch this, right? If I say, I like to dance, or I tend to play soccer, or I run to get to the store, right? If you notice, in English we say the subject, then the verb, I run to get, and then we say to in front of the verb. I like to fish. You see what I'm saying? You say I, the verb, and then you say to the next verb. You put the word to in front of it. Well, why is it, let me ask you, native English speakers, why is it that when you say you should run, we don't say you should to run? Should is a verb. Why don't you say to in front of that? Or I can to kick. Why don't we say I can to kick? Why do we just say I can kick? I could respond to a native Spanish speaker and say, it's just like that, it's just like that. But there is an etymology, there is a reason, there's an origin for the reason that that's the case, that somebody that's learning Spanish could look up and figure out the rule for that, okay? So again, if I'm in the position of teaching someone in English, I probably respond to them when they ask me, why don't you put the word to after the verb should? Most of you probably don't even realize we do that. But if I say you should to swing on those swings over there, it sounds weird. My point is, sometimes things are just so natural in a language that it's hard for someone to explain why it is the case. So if you ask a native Spanish speaker, why is this the case, and they just say, it is just like that, typically there's a reason for it that it's just hard for them to grasp, okay? So I would not listen to that when someone tells you, it just is what it is, it's just like that. No, there's typically a reason for it logically that you can find. And again, in that perfect example, hopefully that I just gave you all with English, there's a reason why you say the word to after certain verbs and you don't after other verbs. Again, you wouldn't say I can to record, you just say I can record. But you do say I like to record. There's certain verbs that include that. So hopefully that point number 4 makes sense. Never listen when they tell you it's just like this, it's just like this. There's a reason for it. And the final horrible piece of advice or horrible piece of information or horrible thing that a native Spanish speaker will tell you, again, it's not horrible inherently. These are actually great things. They're actually telling you this in an effort to help you. But the 5th thing that's horrible that a native Spanish speaker will tell you, and this is going to sound kind of dark, I guess, or it's going to sound kind of negative, but they'll tell you, oh, you speak so well. Oh my gosh, you speak so well. And again, I always appreciate that. I take that as the biggest compliment. But how can I say this? It's honest, but it's honesty mixed in with kindness. And the reason I say that is because I remember people telling me when I was like 6 months, 7 months into the Spanish journey, you sound so well, wow, you sound so well. And I look back on some of those videos that I have on this channel and I'm like, dude, you sounded like an idiot. Like I literally, some of those videos is so cringy, my Spanish, that I can't even watch. It's embarrassing, okay? So again, they're not telling you that you speak well because they're being mean or they're being negative. They're really telling you that as a way to encourage you. But I would say, don't take that you speak so well as like a badge of honor, like, wow, I'm doing so well in the Spanish language learning journey. And I'm sorry I'm getting distracted and stuttering. There's a car with a family staring at me recording in an empty park. But what was I gonna say? Man, I lost my point. Yeah, I remember. So if someone tells you speak well, I would say take it as a compliment. Most times it is genuine, but don't view that as like a way to, you can view it to boost your confidence, but don't view it as don't take it as like a badge of honor, like I'm doing so well and I can kind of slack up on my studies. I would never take it that way. I think most often than not, it's a form of encouragement, not an actual representation of your Spanish level, okay? So again, they're saying that from a positive place, but if someone tells you you speak so well, like I said, just take it as I appreciate it. I appreciate that, but I still have a lot of work to do. Even I, to this day, if someone tells me you speak so well, I know that I can have a conversation, but I still watch myself back or listen to myself again when I record some of my conversations. I'm like, oh my gosh, your accent, like, oh my gosh, you sound like you're from Atlanta, Georgia with a Spanish accent. Like, you need to work on that. Or you just said something horribly, you know, you said the people is, you said the equivalent of the people is, which sounds weird in English. You said that in Spanish. So again, hopefully this video helped. I always am just trying things. I don't know if these things are helping or not. But yeah, I would not, some of the, again, a lot of these things that the Spanish speakers will tell you, they're saying them from a great place. They actually would be helpful depending on your specific goal. But for me, I think that these are things that you can kind of ignore or kind of push past and just kind of say, okay, I recognize that you're telling me this, but I'm gonna keep moving forward and learn. Sorry guys, I'm going to learn all of the Spanish accents, or what was the other point? Or I'm going to actually expose myself to quote unquote poorly spoken Spanish, so that when I go to a country, I can actually understand what somebody that speaks poorly spoken Spanish is saying, or that rules are not black and white and things like that. So I'm sure this video has been long enough. I don't know how long it is now. I'm sure you all are tired of seeing my sweaty face. I'm about to go walk and run this trail a little bit to get a little bit of exercise, and so hopefully this video helped. If you have any video ideas, again, obviously I'm going to record a lot on my trip to Peru, but up until then, it's a couple of weeks from now, you know, I have a couple of ideas, but any ideas that you have that you'd like to see, I'll definitely take them into consideration and record those videos when I have the time. So hopefully this helps. Thank you all again. Ciao pues.